Hi guys, how you doing? Welcome to this episode of Retirement Year Revolution. And in this episode, we're going to talk about procrastination. So why are we going to talk about procrastination? Because most people that listen to this are going to do absolutely nothing. And I mean nothing to even get started. And I've already had comments from people, well, how's this worked out for everybody? And it's, well, I never started. I didn't get around to it. I was busy. Well, I don't think it will work. So I've not started. No, that's okay. That's cool if you don't think it will work. But here's the thing I can promise you. I can't guarantee you will be able to retire in a year because at the end of the day, I don't know you. I didn't know COVID was going to come along. I don't know what other events are going to happen in the future. But what I can tell you is 100% certainty. If you don't do something, things won't change. And most people don't believe it's possible because they don't at least start on the journey. And as you go along, you will discover what is possible. Things start to fall into place. We see it all the time on the trading side. All the time we see people come in, it's overwhelming, they can't do it, which is a terrible affirmation, which we'll come on to in future episodes. But can't do it. And all of a sudden they just learn one little thing that just kind of unlocks something. And it's the same with this, guys. If you are serious and you really would like to retire in a year, look at the action you've taken since you started listening to this podcast and tell me where you're at. I spoke to a guy the other day and he wants to be financially independent. He's been listening to the podcasts. I asked him what his freedom number is. What number does he need to make every day, 5 days a week to be able to get free from his job? And he hadn't even worked it out. So he's not taking the actions that I'm telling you to do. And guys, if it helps, I used to be the same. I actually had a mentor. He had a thing called a matrix sheet, and it was like, where do you want to be in a month, 3 months, a year, 5 years, I think it was, on your health, your finances, your career, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So I was chatting to him and he said, Paul, you won't believe it, but some people don't even fill that matrix form in. And I hadn't filled it in. It was time to be vulnerable and admit that I hadn't done it. And he kind of freaked out on me a little bit. But you know what? I did the exercise. And the reason why, when you get a book and it tells you to do something, the reason it's in there is because generally it works. And a huge tip that I will give you on this podcast is if you read a book that has an exercise in it, do the freaking exercise, guys. You will get so much more out of it. Or a course, video course, a PDF, obviously self-development books or trading books or whatever. Just go and do the freaking exercises they tell you to do, okay? Honestly, you can thank me later. Do the exercises. Most people don't do the exercises, which in itself is a form of procrastination. Now, I haven't done this podcast for 2 weeks, right? One week I was off. I took a week off because I was burnt out and I was tired. And then my mother-in-law, who was 96, unfortunately got taken ill. So that has meant that I haven't done anything really much for 2 weeks. Now, here's the thing. I still get an income rolling in. And in future episodes, I'm going to talk more about the recurring income side of what I do, which means that I have my freedom. From where I am speaking, having that money coming in, whether I work or not, right, is absolute gold. And I wish I could let you all experience it. I wish I could let you all experience that feeling of not having to worry about the bills if for whatever reason you don't work for a couple of weeks, okay? I wish you'd still get paid, money comes in from something that's your own effort, something that you've done, okay? And in fact, my business actually grew. So from where I'm speaking, it's kind of easy to not procrastinate because I've seen the benefits of it. I know it works and I want to keep doing it. Okay. But it is nice when you don't have to, right? But I've got goals and things. Otherwise, one of the reasons I do this, guys, is what gets you out of bed in the morning. And for me, this is part contribution. People always want to know how I did it. I'm doing this. It's free of charge. I'm telling you what I did. So if you are procrastinating, you're missing out potentially in the future. So if we talk about procrastination, we can talk about something that really helped me understand the process was we call it playing a false timeline. Okay, so what we're going to do is I want you to imagine that you don't change anything from where you are now. So I'm generalizing here, but a lot of people I speak to, they're in a job, they don't like like me, they probably don't mind the job too much, but it's the commuting and the hours away from what they want to do, spending time with family, or if they've got a particular hobby or whatever, or it's a lack of income or whatever, but for some reason don't like the job, right? Want to get free from their job. So, and yet they don't start something that will get them out of that, because it probably seems like a big task. So if something seems like a massive task, just don't start, right? So here's what we do. We ask you to look maybe at your left hand. Look at your left hand and imagine that if nothing changes, your life is playing out in front of you on that hand. So you could like look at it like almost like there's a TV screen playing in your hand. You can actually look at it. So on the one hand, you're not going to make any changes. On the one hand, things are going to continue as they are. And what you do is you get a gist, you get a feeling, you get a sensation, you get an idea of what your life is going to be like a week from now if nothing changes. You're not making a side income on a side hustle. You're not doing something that put in place that could retire you in a year. You are looking at that, and in a week from now, what's going to change? And chances are nothing is going to change. Chances are things are going to be exactly the same. But then what we want to do is we want to take that out to 6 months from now. So 6 months from now, if nothing changes, where are you going to be? And chances are, again, probably not that much is going to change for most of you. Doing it that for some of you, you may have an insight, but for most of you, chances are not that much is actually going to change. But that means that you're still probably unhappy with the things you're unhappy about in your life. You probably still are commuting. You probably still don't have as much freedom as you like. You don't have as much money as you like. The only thing is, though, it's been another 6 months of your life where you've not even put anything towards working towards it. So another 6 months of your life gone where you could have been maybe doing something. And then what we want you to do is look at a year. And then what we want you to do is look at 2 years. And then we want you to look at 3 years. And then we want you to look at 10 years. And as you go down the line, nothing changes from this point. Nothing changes. What are you doing? And maybe you've got another job. That's what I used to do. I used to every sort of 3 years, I used to get itchy feet, and I used to look and try and get a better job. And I actually got a pretty good job, and I thought I'd run the rat race, but I was still a rat. I was working more hours. I had a company car, which was great, but they wanted me to drive it all over the country. So I was away from home a lot, and so on and so on and so on. And you can go 20 years, you can go 30 years, you can go 50 years, you can go to the end of your life if you like, and look at what happens if nothing changes from where you are now. What's going to happen? You're going to win the lottery? Do you think that's going to happen? Good luck with that, right? So that's what you do on the one hand, and you really want to get a feeling for how bad it feels, because for most, let's be honest, for most people, if nothing changes from where they are now, it's not going to be what they want. Okay, it's certainly not going to be what they want. They've not achieved what they want, and not just maybe for themselves, for their family. And I'm going to give you a great exercise for that in a minute. In fact, no, let's do it now. Let's tie it in. So as you're looking on the left hand and you're looking at your future where nothing changes, a lot of people, when I talk to them about why they want to do something, it's for their family. They want to provide for their family. So you want to imagine that maybe if you've got children, for example, that they're now growing up in the future, and things haven't changed, and you're still kind of working lots of hours, so you don't spend as much time with them. You maybe can't provide for them as much as you would like, etc., etc. And they're grown up now, and they come to you and they say, "Mum, Dad, I thought you were going to start that business or start trading or follow that retire in a year revolution thing, or whatever it is you were doing. I thought you were doing that for us." That's right, I was. Yeah. So what happened? Because you've not actually achieved it. How good would that conversation be? And then what happens as well, guys, is, and I'm being kind of upfront with you here, and some of you probably won't like it, but sometimes the excuses people give for not doing things. Could you imagine saying to your family, well, yeah, I can't give you everything I wanted to give you, and I can't spend as much time with you as I said I wanted to do, because I had to take the rubbish out. I had to, I was a bit tired, well, there was that film came out. I really wanted to see that film, or, I've been watching that Netflix series. It was great, and I need some relaxation. I need some, I couldn't do it because I was doing those things, it's not great, is it? It's not great. So get a feeling for how bad, right, that can be if you don't make changes. And I'm not talking about layering it on, but I had one guy and he wanted to eat more healthy, and he came to me. Long story cut short, he worked at a gym. If he didn't eat healthily, he would put weight on. If he put weight on, he'd lose his job at the gym. And as we did that exercise, he would actually end up being homeless. That's what was playing out as he imagined going down that line if nothing changed. All of that is in your subconscious, guy. That was all in his subconscious. He didn't know. He didn't know it was in there, right, until he did that exercise and it came out. And your subconscious is more powerful than your conscious mind. Conscious mind is about 5% at best, but we think it's everything because it's the only bit we're aware of, right? So all of that was playing out in his subconscious. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. No wonder he wanted to eat more healthily, right? But he was having trouble doing it. He was procrastinating at doing it. And it's as easy as not putting the crap food in your mouth, isn't it? So on the other hand, on your right hand, or whichever way around you want to do it, you are now going to play out what happens if you do make change. And it's the same process, guys. You just get a feel for what's going on in a week from now. And hopefully this is going to start feeling better to you, right? It's going to start feeling better, okay? Because in a week, what could you do starting today? What could you do starting today? Could it be order a book? Could it be listening to previous episodes of this podcast? Could it be researching Forex, where you can, I'm not saying it's easy to learn. I'm not, but if you can follow a simple process, would it be that you started to look at Forex? Would it be that you started to buy a book on how to make recurring income, an investment book, or whatever? What steps could you take today to start the process? All right. Do you remember when we talked about goal setting in this podcast? I think it was episode 2. If you go back, you look it up. We talk about actually hitting goals. And one of the things we talked about was sequenced in bite-sized chunks, which is basically bringing it down into small little things. So we talked about making a cup of tea, I think, at the time. If you want to make a cup of tea, what do you have to do? Well, you fill the kettle. How do I fill the kettle? Well, you have to take it to the tap and turn the tap on. Yeah, but don't I have to take the lid off first? Well, yeah, of course you do. Otherwise the water will go everywhere. So I need to go to the kettle. I need to take the lid off the kettle. I need to go to the tap or the faucet, and I need to turn the tap on. But if I just turn the tap on and I've got the kettle in my hand here, will it fill the kettle? Well, no, you have to put the kettle under the water flow. Right, so I need to position so once you break things down into small bite-sized chunks, if you only had 5 seconds a day to follow the process of making a cup of tea, it might take you a week, 2 weeks, whatever, but you will eventually get to where you want to be by taking those small steps. And the great thing is, by taking those small steps, every time you take one of them, you can feel good that you're on where you want to be. And again, most people will vastly, vastly, vastly overestimate what they can do in a week or a month, and vastly, vastly, vastly underestimate what they can do in a year. And that's why this thing's called in a year. You're gonna hear from people that have done it in, like, I think one guy's actually done it in like 5 months. Actually got to a point where he could quit his job inside 5 months, right? You're going to hear from Rob, who did it in 7, from a cold start, knowing nothing, right? You're going to hear from those in future podcasts. And make sure you subscribe if you're on YouTube, please. Subscribe if you're on the podcast, if you can. Leave me a comment saying if you'd like to hear those interviews. That'd be great. Appreciate any comments. So on the other hand, we're looking at, what happens when you do make the change. A week from now, a month from now, have you learned more? Have you gained more knowledge? Are you still reading books? Are you still listening to this podcast? Are you practicing the vehicle that you're going to use to get you there? Have you looked at Forex, which is what most people that are following, that most people in our group that are doing it with Forex. You don't have to. Okay, that's not what this podcast is about. But if you want to know what we're doing, what's working for us, we are doing Forex, right? Okay, so if you want to do the same, have you at least researched it? Have you looked into it? Have you looked at our group, for example, where we're all helping each other? A week, a month, 6 months, a year from now, have you maybe you've not retired, but you can see that you could. Maybe you could now see that you are on the process and you're making it You're at the point where maybe you could actually quit your job, but it would be a bit risky, so you want to stay on. Have you aced it? Have you done like Rob did in 7 months? Have you aced it? Have you done it? And then it's 2 years. Well, you're going to get better as your account grows, right? 5 years, 10 years, then you can see your kids from the future again. And imagine how good it would be to be able to buy them a house, buy them a car, whatever it is. Okay. So that is a really powerful exercise to help you see the big picture. Again, goal setting, we talk about what's the end game, what's your vision, where do you want to be? And that is one great way of looking at what will happen if you don't and what will happen if you do. And I would, if the one where you do make the changes doesn't feel better, right, then you've done something wrong. Okay, you've done something wrong. Or you're perfectly happy where you are now. And a lot of people are happy in no man's land, I call it. You're not actually happy, but you're not unhappy enough to do anything about it, because that doesn't give you the drive. Okay, it doesn't give you the motivation. Okay, so that is a powerful exercise, guys, to help you with your vision and help you tap into how good it is. I might do some more exercises on that because there's some NLP things we can do on that. Neuro-linguistic programming stuff, but I want to close this podcast out by giving you kind of the stages of procrastination, and this has helped a lot of people just by understanding the process, and it's kind of helped them see where they get stuck, right? So these steps, if you look for them, there's 5 of them. The first step is we procrastinate, right? So that's the first kind of step, is noticing that you're procrastinating. And I would hasten to say 90% of us don't have any problem in noticing that we're procrastinating and we're not actually doing what we said we would do, what we want to do, what we thought we would do. So that's usually pretty easy, right? When you notice it, quite often it's because you get frustrated, right? So that's the next step. You go, the stages are procrastination into frustration, and you get frustrated. Now, here's the thing. Most people, when they get frustrated about it, they stop doing anything about it, and it's kind of learned helplessness. I was led down a path into researching. There's a horrible experiment that was done by psychologists years ago, thankfully. Nothing too serious, but where they would put dogs into what they call a dog torture cage, and I was like, well, that's horrendous. So what the process actually entailed was you would have a cage with a metal floor that they could pass an electric current through, and they could give the dog a mild, I hasten to add, still horrible, but a mild electric shock. I don't think they do these things anymore, thankfully. And in the middle of the cage, there was a very small wall, probably 2-3 inches. So the dog could easily get over the wall. Like that, it wasn't a barrier. Okay, it was just to separate the 2 sides of the cage. So what would happen is they would put the shock through the metal floor, and the dog would jump around trying to avoid the shocks, and it would be on one side of the cage. So the dog would jump around, goes to the other side of the cage, there's no shock, right? Then what they do is they would put it on both sides. So the dog, it doesn't matter where the dog goes, it gets the electric shock. And that is the interesting point. After that, the dogs would give up. So you could then put an electric shock on the left-hand side of the cage, and if the dog is there, it gets the shock, but there's no shock on the right-hand side, but the dog doesn't move, even though the wall, no barrier, the dog doesn't move. And that is learned helplessness. The dog has learned from the last round that whichever side he goes on, or she goes on, whichever side the dog goes on, okay, in the last round, it learned that it was going to get shocked anyway. So it would lay down and it would whimper when the shocks came, rather than jump about anymore. It would just take it. So even then in the next round, when the shock was only on one side and all the dog had to do was move, it didn't, because it learned helplessness. It learned that, that's just the way it is. I get electric shocks. That's just the way it is. And that's what most of us do with procrastination. We procrastinate, we get frustrated about it, but we just go back to procrastinating. We just go back to the first stage, right? So the next stage you want to look for and catch yourself going back, okay? So the next stage where people get stuck is impatience, right? So that we procrastinate, we get frustrated that we procrastinate, and then we get impatient that we want to get something done, okay? We want to do something, but I've got to take the rubbish out. There's that Netflix series. I've got to go and see family member. I've got to do this. I've got to pick the kids up, whatever. So although I'm really, really frustrated and I'm impatient to take something done, I just can't do it. And again, people go back to being frustrated that they can't get something done, which leads them back to procrastinating. They're the 3 danger steps. So procrastination, frustration, impatience. Okay. Impatience, when you're impatient, that should lead to desire, right? Desire to actually just do it no matter what, right? To actually, I'm just going to get it done. I'll get up earlier. I'll go to bed later. I'll do it in my lunch break. I'll miss that Netflix series. You know, yeah, I won't be going to the cinema tonight, family, because I really need to get this done. Here's why. Here's my big vision. Here's what I'm trying to do. Okay, maybe we'll do a podcast about spouse and family support and stuff. But that desire to actually get it done is where you want to be, because the last step desire leads to is action, actually taking some action. Now, again, the reason why I've mentioned that sequenced in bite-sized chunks, making the cup of tea one step at a time, take the lid off the kettle, you know, take the mug out the cupboard, you know, put the sugar on a spoon, take the lid off the sugar caddy, put the spoon in, you know, get a spoonful of sugar, take it over to the mug, drop that in the mug. The reason why I talked about that is your action could be the tiniest bit of action. It could be something so small, but you still feel good that you've done it, because it's leading you to your vision. It is literally a step on the way to that beautiful, fantastic future where you have taken action, right? It is leading you down that path. And what message is that sending to your subconscious? It's sending a fantastic message to your subconscious, guys, that you are achieving it, that you are actually doing it, okay? So I hope that helped today. Takeaways from today, do that exercise. What happens if I don't change for the rest of my life from this point? What happens if I do change for the rest of my life from this point? See the vision, okay? See the vision, see it play out, see how good it feels. Talk to your kids and your wife or husband in the future, okay? Talk to them, you know, imagine what would the conversations would be like on both sides, okay? Then recognize procrastination, frustration, impatience, desire, action. They are the 5 steps to look out for: procrastination, frustration, impatience, desire, action. With that said, I'm going to see you on the next podcast. If you haven't got the workbook yet, if you head over to retireinayearrevolution.com. If you're on YouTube, you can see it on my poster, retireinayearrevolution.com. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe. I'd love your comments. If you've got a helpful tip to get over procrastination, put it in the comments. You know, this is what we're about. This is what this is about here, okay? And if you're interested in more how we are doing it, you can reach out to me, you can message me, you can get in touch, and details are in the workbook as well. So I will see you on the next episode. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for all the people that are sharing this. We're starting to get traction now. A lot of people, if you are willing to share it, that would be great. I really appreciate it, guys. And I intend on the next episode being out. If you're following along live, maybe you're on the recordings, but I intend to get the next episode done either later this week or definitely next week. So I will see you on that one. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Retire in a Year Revolution podcast. For bonus material to support the information you heard today, be sure to head to retireinayearrevolution.com. That's retireinayearrevolution, all one word.com, and get your bonus content. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode, so be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast.